Okay. What's going on? So how you day? How was your day? How was your week?
Well, it's been a great week so far, although it rained this morning very heavily. In fact, it just stopped raining a while ago. Here in Abuja, we don't get to see rain often, but today's own has been a very wet day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm blessed now. It's just
Exactly.
you're being blessed. It's not easy to
Exactly.
it's not easy to bless now. It's not easy at all.
Yes. Yes.
It's not easy to be blessed. Here
So,
I think we're having summer now, so we don't enter
oh,
summer. So this summer now we say me and my children and my wife we're supposed to be in Nigeria now. Because that was the
yeah.
plan. But
Unfortunately, many people cannot enjoy their summer because of COVID-19.
yeah, at least the children can actually now go outside a bit and play, but um, they can. But the whole idea this time was to come to
Exactly.
Nigeria,
Exactly.
enjoy Nigeria. Many children enjoy Nigeria, but man, it's not going to be so. What we go do?
Yes. Are returning back to normal over here. Things are returning back to normal gradually. So
Yeah, you guys have been. I think Nigeria has taken a pragmatic approach.
yes.
They didn't shut down things completely like that.
No.
Again, God blessed us a kind of with some form of immunity that.
Exactly. In fact, we are very lucky with the kind of I think the kind of what will I call it, the weather. Our weather here somehow I think it favors us a bit.
Yeah, maybe because I think even since it started getting warm here, you find out that death toll started going down.
Yes.
Yeah, man, thanks for just coming to chat today.
Thank you very. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so tell people about yourself. My name is Seiko. Some people know me. Yeah.
Okay.
I live here in Scotland. I like talking about things that would help us discuss our country.
Yes. Well, first of all, let me start by commending you in what you are doing. I've been following previous editions, and I must confess, the conversations have been very interesting, very enlightening as well. You understand? And when I see Nigerians in the diaspora taking interest in Nigeria, I am often very happy because I believe that you guys have a very great role to play in trying to help us rebuild Nigeria and make it a country that all of us can be proud of. Because I believe that if Nigeria were to be, what it should be, many people would prefer to even stay at home than being abroad.
Yeah, waiting with the fine come here. This place, exactly. Say you're like where I stay now. If you just look around, we are the only black family here.
You can imagine.
That black person. Imagine. The cold is very cold here. When it's cold, it's really where I stay. It's one of the coldest places in this kind of Europe, in Western Europe. So,
yes.
There's no place like Nigeria. We are blessed.
There's no place like home at the end of the day. Yes, you can go anywhere.
No, nothing. We just
And as blacks, we like this sense of community, being able to relate with people, chat, and you don't get to do that over there. So, yes. So, I will just introduce myself. My name is Honest Munachisofo. I like to call myself an advocate of good governance and justice. Some people say I'm an activist, and I say no, I am not an activist, because as far as I'm concerned, activism is not a career, it's not a profession. You understand me? It's not a career at all.
Yeah, it's not. No, I think you're right. It's not a profession.
Yes, it's not.
We're just people that are concerned about our country. Personally, exactly. I'm really concerned about my own local government, from my village to my own state to Nigeria, to work again. Because if you look at here, we are I can say that I'm proudly one of the people making it work here in my own little capacity, because I know in the thing I do, I take responsibility. I take real responsibility in what I do. So
Yes.
as a black person, I'm doing what I'm doing here. I don't see why why we can't do it in Nigeria. The white people don't have two heads, but the only thing is that they've eschewed corruption. Just like our topic today, they've decided to say, okay, maybe we work for the betterment of everybody.
Exactly. The issue is this. The painful aspect of it is that when you go to Europe, when you go to America, you realize that most of the people actually making things work there are blacks. Yeah. Many of them are Nigerians. So if Nigerians can be doing all they are doing to help the West do very well, why can we not do it at home? It's not because we don't have the capacity. We have the intellectual capacity, we have the technical capacity, we have the ability. But unfortunately, like you rightly said, corruption remains a problem. You understand me? If we can tackle the issue of corruption, I can assure you this country will become one of the best countries in the world. We just need to do the basic things.
Yeah, you're right, because if you look at this corruption, this corruption crime thing, like you and I, why we decided to talk about this, like I saw this thing, trending all over social media yesterday and day before yesterday about, job, people are asking for people to, submit applications for jobs in Dubai, and explicitly it was said
Nigeria,
or any other African country, any person from people from other African countries can apply
except
Nigerians.
So it's one of the collateral damage. Let me use that word, one of the collateral damage that we now have to pay because of the activities of some of our brothers.
Yeah.
You understand me? In recent time, we've been hearing stories of the people arrested in UAE, Nigerians in UAE and other places.
Going to rob, there were the ones that went to rob Bureau de Change.
Bureau de Change. You can imagine the one that swindled Bureau de Change, the one that swindled money that was meant for, is it COVID-19 to pay some people? The ones that are now involved in intercepting payments, official payments.
But why this thing? I don't want to call people names. I don't want to go into specifics.
Yes.
But again, you see, if people have this kind of knowledge, that's the way I look at it. If people are this intelligent to be able, to break into America's, like America is one of the top countries in IT in the world. And they invented IT, if I might say. So if people are, this powerful, they're intelligent, and that's smart.
Very intelligent, very smart.
So why don't we use it to a good cause rather than, because companies will be looking for you to pay you, even hundreds of millions, thousands or millions of pounds or dollars to do jobs for them if you can hack into.
Yes, one thing is this. In fact, I want to take it from this angle. When we talk about corruption and the upsurge of corruption, you realize that it is coming from somewhere. Now, the advanced free fraud we are seeing today, the corruption we are seeing today is a symptom. It's actually a symptom of a deeper problem.
Yes.
You look at the society today, 2020, compared with 1980, compared with 1990 and in the 70s. Now you find out that society has changed. Values are no longer what we used to know them as. Nobody cares about values any longer. It was, I think it was Mahatma Gandhi that was talking about the 7 evils. And he said one of them is wealth without work. Wealth without work. In the past, when you make money, people want to know the source of the money you made. You understand me? People don't just celebrate wealth. People also celebrate the source of the wealth, how the money was made. But now we have a society where there are no values. Nobody cares how the money is made. Nobody cares whether you stole the money. As long as you make money, you'll be celebrated. You understand? That's number one. Number two is that people are no longer patient. People are in a hurry to make the money. Now, you said those guys are very intelligent. They can be employed here. If you employ them and you pay them 500K or 300K or 200K in a month, at the end of the day, they will tell you how many months will they be able to make up that money to be able to drive the kind of cars they are flaunting. You see somebody,
Yeah,
they flaunt Ferrari, they
I
sell
want to show
hammer.
you something. I want to show you something. I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if you can see what
Yes,
I'm sharing
yes, I
with
can
you.
see.
I don't know if our
Yes,
viewers can see this as well.
yes,
See, I did this cultural web. The cultural web is a tool that you can use to, okay, say, to analyze the behavior, the cultural fact, or the behavioral patterns or the cultural patterns of
yes,
the people.
yes,
And it's
yes,
like you and
yes,
I discussed before. If you look at this point now, you can
yes,
see that one of our rituals or one of our routines now,
yes, yes.
as not you
Intensify
only Igbo people,
to
the whole of Nigeria, is that we
yes.
now wealth celebration, irrespective of source.
Irrespective of socks, nobody wants to know how the money was made.
You know,
Even in churches, I say that what we are seeing today is a failure of society, a failure of the family system, a failure of the church. Society generally has failed. You understand? In fact, I remember there was a time, some time ago in the past, when I was going through some form of challenges. I lost my job. And I went home once and I gave my parents some money. And my father was asking me, how did the money come about? And I was wondering, I was like, why were you? The man was like, no, I need to know how you made the money. I understand what has been going on with you for quite a while. I mean, how did you make the money? That if he doesn't know how I made the money, he will not accept it. But the
yes.
question is, how many parents can do that? In fact, there are
Yeah,
parents who now put their children.
just like you, not to cut you short. When I was one of those lucky chaps when I finished from school earlier. I
Yes.
finished from school. The next year I got a job, and from service I got a job. During my service I bought a Mercedes Benz. Then that was 2003, and my parents were just so skeptical of
Exactly.
even when I came to the UK here. My mother had to when my mother told me when she came here, now saw me I go to work in the morning, I come back, I go to work, I come back, and she told me, look, okay, now I'm very, very comfortable. I know
She's
what
now
you're
settled.
doing. In my own family, you can't bring in money.
Those are the
You're correct.
values.
Our value system. Look at Nigeria. One thing they know us for now is either they know us. In Nigeria, you can't even feel you can't feel the impact. For those of us that live in here, it's either they know us as people that commit crimes or anything about fraud. Fraud happens all over the world. But
Yes.
we are now known as, like if I watch a document, they wrote about the guy, I don't know what's his name, Posh Daddy or Hush Daddy,
Hush puppy.
Hush Puppy. When they, the BBC after a few days collected a lot of information.
Exactly.
And I think 2 days ago, they now wrote an article about him. And in that article, they were alleging that about 80%. I think they said that up to 80% of all fraudulent emails or scams that happen in the world come from Nigeria. So imagine how people will treat us.
It's affecting our image. The issue is that unfortunately, if we look at the impact of corruption on Nigeria, in fact, the cost of corruption, in fact, I think probably we even need to even make a distinction between actually corruption and fraud, because I don't know if we can classify internet free fraud as part of corruption.
No, that's not corruption. That kind of fraud is, you're a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but that one is what people, on individual basis do. I mean, you can perpetrate crimes.
That's pure fraud.
Yes, that's fraud.
That's pure fraud, pure fraud. Now, the issue is now that most Nigerians, and the problem is the world is going digital, like we all know. Yeah. You understand me? We now have a digital economy. If your economy is not digitized, you're going to be left behind. So the impact of this is now that Nigerians are going to be finding it increasingly difficult to access the opportunities that abound in the digital world, because we are now being looked at as fraudsters. You want to fill in a form and you're from Nigeria, you are blacklisted. You can't do some jobs online.
Not to just, I saw yesterday on Facebook as well.
Yes.
UAE has stopped giving Nigerians visas.
Exactly. Look, let me even say this. I actually do freelance writing. You understand me? I write a lot. You understand? Yeah. Some of those platforms where we actually write now, Nigerians have also been blacklisted from participating on those platforms. And of course, it's because of issues like this. because of issues like so. It's actually a very big, is a blight on the image of Nigeria. And I can assure you that by 20, when the corruption index of 2020 comes out, we are going to fall even lower in the corruption index. Presently, in fact, in 2018, Nigeria was on 144. In 2019, we fell below 2 points to become 146. Nigeria currently is the second most corrupt country in Africa, just after Guinea-Bissau. So you can see that the perception, because what Transparency International does is actually to look at the perception of corruption, the perception of people about Nigeria, that Nigeria is a very corrupt nation. So what will happen is that by the time they release the Transparency Index, the corruption index for 2020, Nigeria is going to fall even below, even lower.
Nigeria is now in January 2020. I'm just reading here. In January 2020, Transparency International Corruption Perception Index (CPI) still gave Nigeria a low ranking of 146 out of
146.
180.
And last year it was 144. This year is 146. Who knows? Maybe by next year it will be 150 out of 180 countries. So what it means is that Nigeria, out of 180 countries, we are 146. So what it means is that we are only 34. There are only 34 countries in the entire world that are perceived to be more corrupt than Nigeria. Then
you can't doubt that is true. You can't doubt that, because just imagine, like we said, we are not here to talk about people or anyone, but imagine how America or UK or Europe or China, these countries are not sent by any means, but imagine how they will now be looking at us when I think we were reading in the news about the anti-corruption chief of the country now being someone that they are now investigating for fraud. So, this guy, D. Olu Olagoke, in the book, we read this book in literature in 1980s when we were in secondary school. He said, the incorruptible judge, he said, if the citadel of justice is corrupt, what will happen to the body politics?
Yes.
So
exactly.
So how do you want these countries to take us serious?
Exactly. That analogy just brings to mind. There was a cartoon I saw some time ago where a lady went to the lady justice, the symbol of justice, the lady justice. A lady was in pains and in tears, went and was holding the lady justice, say, please save me. And the lady justice said, even myself, I am also a victim of rape. The lady justice is telling the lady that has come to seek for justice, I am also a victim of rape. It tells you the helplessness of the country. If you can now associate corruption with an agency that is supposed to be fighting corruption. So it tells you how it is. And of course, if we try to ask ourselves, if we try to draw them up and say, okay, what really is fueling corruption in Nigeria?
That was the question I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you this question, like, how did we get here? Because when I was in primary school, if I look at today now, if you look at I'll call him a common LGA chairman,
Exactly.
now travels with Mopol.
Exactly.
Okay. So you could see when I was in primary school, when like the LGA chairman will come, he didn't have a policeman. He would, the only time you see a policeman, even the policeman that used to follow him, will hold a baton.
Oh, yes.
Then when we were doing match
pass, now everybody is carrying gun. You see 2, 3, 4.
Everybody's now carrying gun. I think the whole thing for me is education. When we talk about education, it's not about going to acquire certificates.
Thank you.
I think Nigerians like education, because if a guy, I always say this, you and I I've always said this. You watch my this thing even before I started talking about this.
Yes.
When a guy, he doesn't own an industry, he doesn't own a shop, he doesn't own a business, all of a sudden he goes into politics, and this is a recent thing. He starts building houses all over the place, start buying land, and the same people who are supposed to question the wealth, not calling him chairman, sir, honorable.
Exactly. Okay, now you just made a very important point. You know, on social media, you see a lot of things. People make a lot of joke and jest, and people are saying, okay, they put a picture up and you see hush. I won't call any names. You see hush puppy. you see hush daddy, you see hush papa. Now, the issue is that because of the official corruption we are seeing in government, because of the kind of money we are seeing in government, the youths are saying they want to be like those people. When I talk about wealth without work, they are seeing wealth without work. People becoming stupendously rich for doing nothing. You understand me? Government is very corrupt in Nigeria. Now the issue is who is now going to set the example for the youth to copy from? Who is going to set the example? What is going to set the example? Now, apart from that, you also realize that advanced free fall that we call Yahoo Yahoo is actually progressing. It progressed from dating. People make calls and you know they look for lovers abroad, swindle them of money, promise them marriage. It moved from there. When that started, what did government do to fight it? A lot was not done. It moved from there to now, okay, telling people email scams. It moved from email scams now to now camouflaging websites. People build their websites that almost exactly like the other website, and they now intercept payment. So you could see the gradual increment. It was incremental. But the question is, when it was increasing, what were we doing? Now, even the people...
if you're talking about that, you can't even see what were we doing? How can somebody, you see, like one of the doctors here that commented on our Facebook, if you go to Facebook, you see that. Thank you, so you can find this on this live, because I'm watching it on Facebook as well. You can see one of the doctors here wrote, he said, until our value system changes. You see, when the guy who is supposed, or who was supposed to create jobs, hello, you there? Well, I've lost you. Okay, I'll continue. The guy who was, until the guy who was supposed to create jobs, you know, begins to think about creating jobs. You're not creating jobs for the youth. They look for something. They just look for whatever they can lay their hands on and start doing. That's the way it is. You know, if you don't create jobs for the youth, which is all we've been clamoring for, the youth will find something to do for themselves, and that is why we are where we are today. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. But we need to, I think our image needs to, we need to do something as our image as Nigerians. Otherwise, are you there? Yeah, I know you went off. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay.
Hello, I think we lost you for a while.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, it's okay, no problem. You're in Nigeria, so that's one of the characteristics of Nigeria. But we know that this will happen at some point. So the guy who was supposed to create jobs, doesn't create jobs. You know, the guy who is supposed to create the enabling environment. You know, because the function of a government, make no mistake, the basic function of a government is to create the right environment for businesses to thrive. For businesses to thrive. So look at when you and I were growing up. Let's look at Aba, for example. I always look at, I'm from other states, so it's not like, because this has nothing to do with Ipazo. Ipazo didn't cause the rot. He wasn't the cause of the rot. No, this was something gradual.
It's systemic, yes.
Yeah, it's systemic. So when we were growing up, when I was schooling in Aba, you had Bata, you had the PZ, you had, you know, companies all over the place. Then if you go from
you have Michelin, you have glass industry.
So you have from Omeka, if you're going from Omeka to Aba, all those places are
exactly.
Companies were popping left, right, and center. But because the government was not providing security, the government was not building infrastructure, so businesses started moving away, going away to other places. And what we have today now is that we have a place where which is not fit for businesses to thrive. The youth cannot get employed. So what the youth can now do is whatever they lay their hands on, they just jump in. And the easiest thing for the youth right now is corruption or is fraud. So they just jump into fraud. But what I don't understand is what necessitates, you know, what prompts these are, you know, the political class now to just go in, you know, still, you know, what do you need all this money for? I don't understand.
I'll give you two examples. I'll give you two reasons. Number one, the biggest enabler of corruption in the world, the biggest enabler of corruption is poverty. Say it anyway. The biggest enabler of corruption and fraud is poverty. You don't sermonize to someone who is hungry, someone who is poor, someone who is broken, someone who doesn't have access to healthcare or food. Listen, we cannot conclusively deal with corruption in Nigeria until we solve the problem of poverty. Now, Nigeria is the world's poverty capital with over 80 million people living below the poverty line. So people will always do, the instinct of man is to survive. And people will always, this is not trying to justify fraud or corruption, but I'm trying to say that as long as poverty remains endemic in Nigeria, corruption will continue to be.
Hello, go ahead. I'm listening to you. Guys, sorry, it's just that, we're in Nigeria now. This guy is in Nigeria, so, our internet system is not that very strong. So, well, anyone is free to join. There's a link there on the comment section on Facebook. You are free to join. Just click on the link, and if you have Zoom, you are free to join us and contribute. So why are we, we are talking about what we're describing today, or what we're discussing today is the the impact of corruption on our image and on our crimes committed by Nigerians and our corruption level on the impact of our corruption level on our international image. If you've traveled abroad or if you live abroad, you see Nigerians are checked in a different way from the way they are checked. Any other country, any other person from any other country is checked. So that's all we're discussing here today. If you like to join, welcome, Prosper. You can contribute if you want to contribute. No, we can't see.
Yes, I am back. Sorry, network is really disturbing.
Yeah, that's one of the this is still caused by corruption, because what does it take? Is the same technology that is working all over Europe. Why don't you buy it and get the telecommunication companies to install the same equipment in Nigeria? But here we are. We have the money.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, yes. I was actually saying something about before the network problem, that the biggest enabler of corruption is poverty. That's number one. Then number two, we have a problem with impunity. When there is no sanction for wrongdoing, it becomes a culture. Once there is no sanction for wrongdoing, it festers. So we have a problem in Nigeria that people engage in corruption, in fraud, and there is no punishment. People see how people loot money and they live large and they collect chieftaincy titles and they even become leaders. They even go to National Assembly, become governors, become president, become anything you want as long as you have money. So where is the deterrence? If there is no deterrence, if there's no deterrence for corruption, why will I not engage in corruption? You understand me? As long as there is no deterrence, as long as we are even incentivizing corruption in Nigeria. We are giving incentives for corruption in Nigeria. What is the incentive? If you steal money and you come and do some form of philanthropy and share money, you will collect a chieftaincy title and tomorrow you become a politician and a leader. So we are actually incentivizing, instead of discouraging people from going into corruption, we actually encourage people to go in. The only time you become a thief is when you are caught. And in Nigeria, you rarely get caught. So as long as there is no sanction for wrongdoing, corruption will remain endemic in Nigeria. We cannot solve it except there is, okay, go to China and try it. Go to China and try it. Go to Indonesia and try it. Go to Malaysia and try it. Even the UAE, why is it not rife in UAE? Because there is sanction for all of those things. But here in Nigeria, nobody sanctions you. We are free to do what you want to do at the end of the day. So, you can't talk about fighting corruption until there is really until there is sanction for wrongdoing.
Yeah, the whole thing is just the whole thing is like if you look at this process, up until 1999, let's say, people say that corruption started with the military guys taking over power. But even when the military guys were in power, even when the military guys were in power, there was still,
it was not like this.
It wasn't like this,
it wasn't like this. Hello, how are you?
Daddy, what are you doing, Mother?
Yeah, I'm doing something. I don't want you to hear anymore. You have to go away now.
What are you doing, Mother? What are you doing?
Yeah, that's my friend. I'm talking with my friend. Bye, Louis. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Hello, Dr. Moses. Welcome.
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Moses. You're welcome to the show.
Yeah. I can't be on the video at the moment.
Okay.
But I can speak.
Okay.
Without being on the video.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yes. I think.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Moses. Are you there?
Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can. Yes.
I can't be on the video. The thing is, you see, we're not ready to fight corruption yet. No.
Okay.
As a country, we're not yet ready to fight corruption because, you see, corruption is an integral part of what we designed as a society.
Okay.
The Constitution, for instance, aids corruption. Let's look at National Assembly, for instance. National Assembly are stupendiously, the members of the assembly are so wealthy.
Yeah.
Okay, the salary they pay each member, whether it's the red chamber or the green chamber, each individual there, the amount of money they collect can actually feed a whole village. I mean, in a month. Now, you cannot change that constitution. No, I mean, we are about 200 or more than 200 million people in that country. The whole 95% of the entire Nigerian demographic cannot change that constitution. They can't. The constitution in itself made it only possible for the members of the House of Assembly, the National House of Assembly, to vote for that constitution to be changed. And because they are milking the system, they cannot vote against what is feeding, their self ambitions and whatever they want to achieve. They cannot vote against it. So that is number one thing. That is where you see corruption started from the constitution that was designed. And
Dr. Moses. So for your information, Dr. Moses is Dr. Moses is a lecturer here in the United Kingdom. He's Nigerian as well. So, Dr. Moses, what do you think we can do? Because it's getting worse and worse by the day, as you heard some minutes ago, and you've read already. It is alleged, it's an allegation yet still that the head of Nigeria's anti-corruption agency is now being investigated for corruption. So where do we go from here? Hello, Dr. Chris. Welcome, Dr. Chris, as well. Welcome to the show. So what do you think?
What I'll say is this. What I'll say is, you see,
worse by the day, as you heard some minutes ago, and you've read of it.
Hello.
Yeah. Doctor, go ahead.
Okay. So you see, what I will say is, until there's a change in our value system,
good.
Until there's a change in our, you see, one of your panelists there was saying something very, very vital, that nobody checkmates the source of wealth anymore. Rather, we celebrate the outcome of this wealth. So, because the young boy he goes to propose to a girl he loves and he wants to marry without a car, though he's a nice guy with a future. But another guy whose source of wealth is not verified, right, is living the vision of the other man. You see, he's already arrived within the vision of the man who has good heart, good vision, good intentions for the girl he wants to marry, and comes to propose to the same girl. The girl knows that this other guy is actually the nice guy, but looking at him, he's not, maybe doesn't have the propensity or the capabilities to fulfill or to satisfy her needs materially. She runs to the young man that came with a car to propose to her. Now, the thing is, what would you say would happen to the young man who came to propose to the same girl without a car? The next opportunity he finds, whether it's good or bad, he's going to jump into it. Yeah. He's going to pay whatever sacrifice that, you know, he feels he can pay to gain the status he's looking for in the society. So status in society has defined our common value. That's the thing. Until that is addressed, the system cannot change. You can't, for instance, our law enforcement, how many of them are trained to monitor communication that goes on in the web? Web communication, cloud communication. How many law enforcement, you know, individuals within the agencies are trained to monitor this thing? You and I know that in the UK, in US, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, you can't just send emails like that because your IP address is there. Even when you clone your IP address, they are still trained to trace you where you are. So it becomes difficult for corruption to thrive. And you can't just, you know, drive anything you want anytime. You can't just live in any house you want. You are, even when you go to bank for them to loan you money, they have to look at your credit file. They have to look at everything. Let me give you an instance. A lady wanted to pay the child's school fees in the UK, and the husband is in Nigeria. The husband sent, it's a private, you know, school, secondary school, which is about £20,000. So the husband sent this money in badges of 2,500 into 8 places. Her account was suspended. You know, bank account was closed down. Why? Legitimate money sent, but because they cannot verify the source of those, you know, injection into that account, they have to shut down the account until proven that this is legitimate transfer that was done into her account. You see that? So now, from what I read in the news, it's still alleged anyway that a particular, you know, bank director was even, you know, paying to shield himself from being investigated by a chief investigating officer, and he was paying millions of millions to you know, to be shielded so he doesn't get investigated. Now this is a bank chief. So what do you now think of, you know, these Yahoo boys or whatever they're being called that use the same platform to perpetrate corruption, to perpetrate?
Yeah, Dr. Moses, if I can just come in here, Dr. Chris, after you just jump in after. You know, what you're saying is true. When we were students, yeah, you know, we were students in the UK, we started studying, and one of my friends, his boss, who he used to work for in Nigeria, sent him, you know, wanted to buy some equipment from Europe. So the guy wired the money into my friend's account, I think about £9,000 then. And for just £9,000, which is about maximum of 4 million naira in Nigeria. 9,000, yeah, am I right? 4 million, about 4 million, yeah, 4 million naira in Nigeria. So he wired them £9,000 into my friend's account for my friend to pay for that equipment for him. The bank invited my friend, invited him. No, tell him to stop. So sorry, guys. So the bank invited my friend and asked him to close the account. My friend tried to explain. They said, no, take your money and close the account because they could not verify the source of income. But in Nigeria, you know, people without businesses just become rich overnight. And like honest, you said, you know, these guys that they can't, because these monies they are using to enrich themselves are monies that should have been used in creating the environment for businesses to come in. So these guys watch them. This guy doesn't do anything before. All of a sudden, he's a rich man, and these guys start, looking for whatever way they can. It's either they aspire to be a politician or they aspire to. So, Dr. Chris, please jump in.
Yeah, Eke, thank you for allowing me to say something. And I've been listening to all the other people. I think it's Honest and Tochukwu just spoke. Yeah.
Dr. Chris is a lecturer here in the United Kingdom too. So, because they're Nigerian, not Nigerian in the United Kingdom too, yeah.
One of the thing is, we've been talking mostly what we Nigerians will talk about most times are the symptoms. The symptoms of a system that has completely collapsed. For example, you were just talking, Tochukwu, you were just talking about bank transfer. The banks in Nigeria have moved on to the system you have in Europe, where you can do wire transfer, you can go to an ATM and collect money. But those basics that the banks in the West have, we don't have it in Nigeria. For example, we don't have an address system in Nigeria where you can locate somebody who owns a bank account. You don't have those. Those things people would say in the West are constants. You don't have it in Nigeria. So sometimes we are dealing with the symptoms. We create. We are now in a digital world. We create these digital platforms for our people without having the basics. My son in primary school can use a computer. How many children in primary school in Nigeria would be able to use a computer? So, but then you want them to do things people in the West are doing. So again, I would always tell us Nigerians to go back to the basics. Let's go back and fix that system that is already broken. Because if we don't fix it, whether we work, and somebody talked about the value system. Who changes the value system? The government would not change the value system because it's the same system that has created the people who work in government. Is the same system that has created the woman who sells onions in the market. There's no difference. Then you go, the guy who is a religious man, a priest, a pastor, who you think has values, is also a problem. So who changes that system? That value system you want to be changed. So again, we have to go back to education. There was a time Eke talked about it. Education, and education is not about building schools. Education is not about giving children pencils and papers to go to classrooms. Education is a massive reorientation of a system that has already broken. So
how can you reorientate someone that's hungry? That's a,
if Chris, if I jump in here,
yeah,
you mentioned some valid points, but
can you please unmute your system, please? Don't you on mute? Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
I say education can be harnessed in two ways. Education can be harnessed positively, can be harnessed negatively. Now, some of these guys that is doing this email scam, they are educated.
Yes.
That if they are not educated, they won't be able to clone organizational websites and email accounts and divert funds that has been, that's meant to be transferred to the original, to the original corporate entities. This is educated guys. So, but you can see that they are harnessing this education in the negative
way. But Tochukwu, you're talking about education. This is what I was talking about. It's not about having a pen and a paper. It's not that sort of education. The sort of education I'm talking about is that sort of education that an individual can actually see that this is wrong and this is right. And if I do the wrong thing, this is how it affects me and the society I exist in. Here in the West, and I would assume you're in the West. Here in the West, if you have a child, you can see a child trying to analyze wrong and right. And when they analyze these things, they tell you the consequence of doing the wrong thing. But the guy in Nigeria, despite the fact that he has all the degrees, cannot actually determine what is wrong from right. That is the sort of education I'm talking about.
Okay, now I get your point, because it's been very crystallized. I get your point. But
Yes.
Your child coming back to do a correct analysis of societal, trend of value is dependent on a certain observation. So that your child is observing a trend from his or her teachers. There is an observation that's going on in your home, which you are not aware that they're observing what you're doing, what your wife is doing. Then they go back to school, they observe the value system of those who are teaching them. Now, there is a consistency, right? For instance, the government has said there should be social distancing, and they're watching you. They're watching their teachers in school. They get there and they see there's a social distancing observation there. It's not just what they say. Remember, children are not moved by what they hear. They are moved by what they see. That is what becomes a trend for them. Now, the value system back home, right? Now you see children going to school and the teachers are completely opposite what they tell them. Lots of them.
But then again, that's what I said. You have to change the system. And again, that's why I said, when you say the value system, it's because it's just like the chicken and the egg. Which one comes first? So you have the chicken and you're like, this is a chicken, but how do you get the egg that creates that chicken? So what I'm just saying is, we go back, we start from somewhere. And I'd spoken about this with AK some time ago. And I said, you see, if a president comes into power in Nigeria and says, in my first 4 years, I would deal with our normal education system, and I would deal with, say, the judiciary in my first 4 years, and I would say deal with the police and restructure these sectors or rehabilitate these sectors. What you would have just created is that punishment mechanism that Muna said earlier on. That punishment system where if somebody makes a mistake, you have an independent police that would investigate that crime, and you have an independent judiciary that can prosecute that person. From that point, you are creating a system that starts seeing wrong for wrong and right for right.
So Chris, thank you for that. Then that comes back to leadership, because you see, it's not necessarily, that is my opinion, it's not necessary. Education is part of it, but someone will have to regulate the outcome of that education. And that comes from leadership, because every empire rises and falls on leadership. Eke says something very vital in one of the books he read while he was in school. He said, when the citadel of justice is corrupt, where will be the politics? You see, the thing starts with leadership. If leadership cannot, inject into the society a value system that will begin to change the perception and the viewpoint of the citizenry, then corruption would be, an eternal monument in that society.
So, but then the leaders come from.
Caroline jump in. The problem here is
the leaders come from a
how
group
do we
of
get
people.
the right leadership? How do we get the right leadership?
Yes.
Now, please let me just say something. It's been a very interesting conversation, I must say, and I think what we need to look at right now is solutions. What can we do? How can we solve the problem? And I think there are 4 things I'm going to list out that I think we can do. The issue of corruption, like I said earlier, is just beyond what we are seeing. It's a symptom. We need to deal with the root cause. the root cause of the problem. And if you look at corruption in Nigeria, you see that it is getting worse, progressively worse. Now, this is 2020. It wasn't like this in 1999. When Nigeria returned back to democracy, what happened is that we democratized corruption. When the military were in power, there was also corruption, but the corruption was limited to only the military, only to very few people. So with the coming of corruption, we democratized corruption. Now you have states, you have local governments, you have National Assembly members, you have ministers, you have permanent secretaries and directors in the civil service, you have people in the state, you have people in the local. So we democratized corruption. You understand me? With the coming of democracy, what do I think we can do? There are two things we can do. Either we go with the top to bottom approach or bottom to top approach. Bottom to top approach means that we need to change our foundation, which is faulty. In terms of the value system, how can we begin to, from the family system, begin to inculcate the right values to our children? The top-bottom approach, which is faster, is leadership. Chinua Achebe said that Nigeria's problem is squarely that of leadership, and I agree. Leadership can really get change things for us faster than even the bottom to top approach. Leadership in the sense that we will lead by example. Now, when Buhari came into government in 2015, there was the first 6 months, there was this sense of, there was this shift, a revolution in mindset, kind of. People said, okay, now we'll have a new sheriff in town. The man is incorruptible. The man is going to fight corruption. You realize that for the first 6 months, the refineries were working. These were the same refineries that were not working before he came into office. He came into office, refineries started working. You look at the system, people started doing things differently. Why? Because they thought that the man that was coming into office was going to fight corruption and the man was going to do well. After some time, when we now realize that it was still business as usual, people went back to their normal life. And of course, this is where we are today. So 4 things I think we can do. Number 1, we need to restructure. Somebody talked about, I think it was Dr. Tochukwu that talked about constitution. We need to restructure this country. Then we need to reform our institutions. We need to reorganize our systems. Then we need to reorient the mind of people. 4 things: restructure, reform, reorganize, and then reorient. Now, you cannot, ideally, you can't really reform Nigeria without restructuring Nigeria. Restructuring our system in terms of the constitution, you understand me, will reform a lot of things. Because the institutions...
But honestly, if I can jump in here, I don't really, because we've had this argument before on the Nigeria Development Podcast show. I think we'll be taking this on we'll be doing this. I just wanted to get more people on my timeline. We'll be doing it on, we have a dedicated show for this. Sorry, I haven't invited you before, but Chris has been on that show. And we've looked at it and we've seen that, restructuring might not really be the answer, because like you said, when the present government came in, when the man, because one thing that we've identified with Buhari right from time immemorial is that this is an incorruptible judge.
Yes.
That this is a man that will not, everybody was shivering that, you do something because of war against indiscipline in 1983, him and the Diabo. No, there was this apprehension in the minds of Nigerians in 1984-85. There was this apprehension in the mind of Nigerians that, man, you're going to go to jail. This man is going to round up people and go to jail. Like you said, they waited for 6 months, 7 months, 1 year. They didn't see the change they were anticipating, and people went back to their defunct position. So I think the way Nigerians jettisoned Jonathan's administration, I'm not going to say if that's right or wrong. That's not the context of the show. Yeah. The way people wanted a change, there was this clamor for change. It doesn't matter outside Yoruba, Igbo, Efik, everybody wanted change, and they thought we were going to have that sheriff, and Nigerians were anticipating a change, but it didn't happen. So what I'm saying is that even in this current structure, we can still effect a change. We can still start to. All it needs is, like we said, the political will for someone to say, okay, I am going to start. You can't change Nigeria, but you can start changing from one point to the other.
Yeah. Okay, let me come in. Sorry, let me just jump in before Honest, I think, before he carries on. Yes, I think my opinion is a bit contrasting here, because I feel restructuring is the first step we need to take. For instance, the cost of governance in Aso Rock alone, the cost of governance, if we cut that by 75%, it will create jobs effectively in 2 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. The cost of governance. But I listened to the vice president and he said, unfortunately, the people that will vote to change that cost of governance is still the people in the governance. So, and that is a very unfortunate situation that we found ourselves. There has to be restructuring of that constitution.
But if you restructure Nigeria and you go down to the regions, as it is today, will it still not be the same dogs in the National Assembly, the same dogs as ministers that will still occupy those
No. We're running a federal system of government, isn't it? Now, yes. If we restructure Abuja, if we restructure the constitution, it will cascade down to even the ward system, ward in councils. It would you see, the constitution we have is not, I've looked at the constitution, it's not very well crystallized. It's not, we just did, I believe we brought from different nations and put it together and make it our constitution. We need to look at it. Nigerians are intelligent and educated. We need to sit down, look at this constitution, redefine the objectives of this constitution at every section and every subsection, and ensure that it's satisfying the needs of the society. You can't copy and paste constitutions here and there. It's not tailored down to the challenges that are domestic in your region, and you want to use to govern the country. That is why we cannot rise from our failing state until the constitution is number one thing, because if you don't amend and restructure and redefine the objectives and the aim of that constitution, you cannot achieve a successful state in Nigeria. It's impossible. It's impossible. For instance, I'll give you an instance. Do you know that we do lots of contracts in Nigeria? There's no procurement system that is well defined. You know that. There's no contractual form of standard form of contract that is being used to procure those contracts. That's why inflation of contracts are everywhere. Something they could do $1 million when they did when they reconstructed the infrastructure at Abuja airport, the runway. The money they claim they used is 2 times the money they used to upgrade Heathrow Airport. So tell me, which one is more in capacity? So the thing is, we need to go back to the basics. I love what Honor said. Restructuring is key. And where do we start from? Constitution. We need to sit down with the constitution and change almost everything. Even some of the powers of the president has to be curtailed, so that other regions can have avenues to contribute to societal development. Right now, a whole lot of things are centered from Abuja. You see, the economy we operate is not sound enough, for regional development, where every governor goes to Abuja, collect money, comes back. There's no initiative, there's no concept, there's no schematic and approach that is being designed or developed to be able to develop this state and these councils. You and I know that where you live right now is the responsibility of the council to maintain the lighting system, to maintain the road infrastructure, to maintain different things in that place. We know what is national responsibility where you live, and we know what is council responsibility. Those things are not clearly defined. And if you tell me that they are defined, where is the system that is created to enforce transparency and to enforce implementation of what is defined in those constitutions? Even if they are defined, the implementation force is lacking, it's not there. So if we sit down to redefine this thing, it would change the structure of government. It would change the system. I know the 36 or 39 states, how many states is still there and they still have governors. But if we redefine the constitution, you will find out that there will be implementation at every phase of governance, at every sector, at every section. You will find out that the nation will be able to move forward. I mean, the damage that's already been done will take us more than 50 years to correct if we start to do the right thing today. Much more when we've not started. So I'm just wondering if the constitution, if you go to the law court, the judicial system is tied by the constitution. You go to the police, the police force is tied by the constitution. You go to custom, to clear goods is tied by the Constitution. Everything is tied by the Constitution, and has given the guys in the national honorable members, okay, honorable members in the red chamber and green chamber, it has given them so much power over the people they govern. That is why
Tochukwu, please, just a minute. You see, again, we're just coming back to where I started earlier, and I said, we ourselves as Nigerians, yeah, we create this very, very, very mammoth bureaucracy that when you're preferring these solutions, anybody who is listening to it starts thinking, how do we manage this? How is it possible? For example, when you're talking purely about the Constitution, you're looking at, okay, how do we amend the Constitution, for example? Or how do we just dump this Constitution and maybe create what people have sometimes called a national conference? That becomes a mammoth bureaucracy. So it makes it that whosoever goes in there as a president or somebody as a leader looks at it like, well, this is something, it's untouchable. We cannot go down this route. How do we change this Constitution? How do we go down this route? But the truth of the matter is, if you take different facets of this massive bureaucracy and rehabilitate those little facets, what you would have done is you would have started treating the problem in various areas. Like I said earlier on, you look at the police, you look at the judiciary, you look at our education system. You can deal with those ones without going through the Constitution. You can make them respond to the needs of the Nigerian people without going.
Chris, what you're saying is the problem is actually having the leader that has a political will.
That has the idea. That has the idea, who knows how to deal with things, who will look at these problems and say, okay, because going the route that Tochukwu is giving us would be a problem. I mean, for example, if you want to change the Constitution so that the people in government, the government bureaucracy or the government, the amount of money we spend in government can be reduced, the people who do that are the people in the Senate and the House. So going through them would not work. So
you can lobby them. That's another quality of leadership. You can actually lobby them.
You create a system where if people make this mistake, they can be punished, and severely too. So it will make the next person not to make that mistake. So by then, what we would have been doing is, we would have been creating a system where our children, when they go to school, they see that their teachers are doing the right thing. They see that their parents are also doing the right things. And this is when you created that system that punishes, like Munachi said earlier on. But if you want to follow this route, you're following the route of people telling us break up Nigeria, the route of people saying we want true federalism. All those things are not going to work because it is just so massive for a leader to take on, especially with all the respective interests. And that's what I think.
I think if we can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, I think, most times when we discuss Nigeria's issues, if we are not very careful, we actually run the risk of becoming very discouraged and very despondent, thinking Nigeria's problem is totally intractable and without solutions. You understand me? I mean, sometimes I look at the problems and I tell myself this country may never really get well, but I believe some things can still be done. You understand me? But unfortunately, the Nigerian people, the masses who are the victims of corruption, the masses who are the victims of these many years, these decades of deprivation, these decades of corruption, stealing, and all of that, we are not doing enough. It will take the people to really wake up to their responsibility. I think our docility as a people have really empowered our leaders to continue to take us for granted. It has to take the people, because at the end of the day, I mean, I was reading a report that tends to say that there is a correlation between politics and corruption. And with that, for us to really solve the problem of corruption, we need to fix politics. And we cannot fix politics without, without talking about the people we elect into office. Someone was actually saying it. We need to get the leadership right, because even if today we restructure Nigeria, without the right leadership, we will still not be able to get it right. You understand me? So leadership is really very key and very important. If we have the right kind of leaders, that is when we even begin to say, okay, we have the capacity to fight corruption. Now, another thing we also need to do is in terms of reforms. We look at the kind of reforms that were brought in the past, in terms of using technology to fight corruption. Some of those things actually helped. It helps to weed out ghost workers from the payroll. It helped, of course, to reduce the way we procurement in terms of buying things using money, and all of. We need more of those, and that's the reform I'm talking about. I mean, we need more of those reforms.
Yeah, I think, honestly, if I can just jump in here, there's something when I did MBA, there was something they taught us in the MBA class about human resources, how to manage your staff.
Yes.
And I've written an article on that. If you, I think I posted an article on. I'll send it. I'll put up the link to that article when I say that.
Yes.
Change management, because what we're talking about here is change. Change management is not all about processes and procedures.
Yes.
Change management is actually about the people. The people are at the center of the change. But you see that in most cases when people are implementing change projects, they focus more on the processes, on the procedures, they get it right, forgetting that you cannot implement those changes without moving people, causing people to change their mindset.
Yes. But
Okay,
you know that you can actually incentivize change. Listen, what we fail to understand is corruption is lucrative.
Yes.
What option are you giving to somebody who is benefiting from corruption to stop the corrupt practices?
Yeah, that's what I was going to come to. Going to come to. So what I was going to come to is when we talked about education here, all of us have agreed here that we need some form of education, some reorientation. And that it involves, like, if we had the right leadership, that's where leadership is required. If we had the right leadership, who will come in now and say, look at Nigeria now, Dubai. We started before Dubai, or we started with Dubai. Dubai now is a place where our people are running to do slavery work. Nigeria, that's Dubai, and we are now being denied visa. We're not talking about UK. We're not talking about Germany. We're not talking about, we're not talking about the existing economies. We are talking about economies that started with us. We are now being enslaved, even in Libya. So it takes a conscious leadership with intention to say, okay, look, guys, call his fellow politicians, the people in the Senate, the people in the green chambers, call them, or red and green chambers, call them, look at guys, there has to be a mental shift. There has to be a mental shift. Get the governors involved. How do we change this perception?
How can you change the perception when the governor himself is inherently corrupt?
There needs to be that leadership. There needs to be that leadership. You can make all the laws in this world. They will find ways to flout the laws. There needs to be that leadership that can come and say, guys, the way this thing is going, at some point, we too cannot be allowed to go to these countries. So how do we rebuild this country? You get them to, that change will now be driven by them. You make them to understand the problem, to buy into the problem, into the change project, and they will lead the change. Making laws, reforms this, reforms that, will not work until these guys themselves begin to think about that, understand the problem that they are causing. it's shameful that you see in Nigeria. Maybe why you can't see much now is because coronavirus has caused it. If you come to like what's going the graduation period, this is the graduation period. You will see
a lot of them.
Our governors. You see our ministers, our governors, all of them happily coming to the UK to take pictures with their children. Whereas we can build these schools and invite these same white guys to come and teach us.
But my brother, the problem is where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? The victims of corruption, the masses that are suffering, where is the outrage? Where is the desire to effect change? Where is the anger to say, no, we are tired of this kind of leadership. We now want a new stock of leaders that we know can perform better than this. There is no outrage, there is no anger, there is no desire, there is no, people have even given up on the nation. Nobody even wants to make any form, lift a finger to do anything. So what happens now is that the masses are waiting for their own opportunity. Either they get it through Yahoo, what people are now doing, or the way they are taught to when they get into politics to start stealing. So you can see that the whole web is, where is the outrage? Because at the end of the day, you cannot effect leadership change without the people. And when the people are not sufficiently empowered to be independent-minded, to know that they even need to make a change, then where do we even start from? That is the problem. Where is the outrage?
I think the structure.
Honest. We are just saying truly the same thing. But when you ask the question, where is the outrage? Who is the guy who is going to shout? Is it the guy who does not understand that he's been ripped off?
He's being shortchanged.
The guy who does not understand that governance is actually supposed to be better than this. The reason why some of us who live in the West can shout is because we have seen something different.
Yes.
The reason why some few people in Nigeria actually react to some of these things is because they maybe sometimes they travel, they read, they are educated enough to understand that that's not how a system is supposed to run. So again, it comes back to leadership, and that leadership should be the sort of leadership that for somebody who's, and sometimes I would think if we even go back to the military, if we can have, I had a colleague of mine who was a Nigerian major who came to the United Kingdom to do a PhD program some time ago, and he told me that why don't we have light? Is it that we don't have the engineers? We actually do have those engineers, but then you have a system where people who are lettered enough, people who have the capacity to make these changes, cannot get into political office. Yeah, I mean, even when they get into political office, you realize they are half-baked. I mean, when some people who, people who you think, oh, this guy has XYZ degrees, when they find themselves in these political offices, you realize that they just don't know jack. So they don't have the capacity. So it comes back to that thing, that education thing I'm talking about. It comes back to trying to let people understand that we can get something better than this. I mean, honest, I don't know if like for you, if you've ever seen a Nigerian politician actually convincing a crowd about the system, telling them why the system is not working for them and what he's going to do if he gets into power. You don't see that. Nobody's campaigning in Nigeria. I've never seen them. They create these massive rallies where
because our people don't know. Our people don't know that that people need to tell them what they are going to do.
Exactly.
So to make them
that's
vote
not
for
the
them.
essence. Again, that's the thing I'm telling you. That's not the essence of a campaign in Nigeria. The essence of people going for a campaign rally, for example, is
It's
if
to
they
get money.
salt and pepper.
Yeah.
I think that the candidates, political candidates in Nigeria actually campaign. But the thing is, they do campaign. That is why they make references to what the presidential candidate said when he was campaigning, what the governorship, aspirant
What
to
sort of
campaign
campaign? What sort of campaign?
said.
Has anybody? For example, I will give you the typical example is the current president. In the course of the campaigning, did you hear any economic plan? Did you hear any?
Well, it might not be as detailed as you expect, right? But what they do is that they play with intelligence of the people, because they understand that about 70% of the electorate, right, do not have, the basic intelligence to do political analysis. They know that. So they just play to the gallery. That what they just do is
but Tochukwu, you are giving these people a lot of credit. I'm telling you, you're giving them a lot of credit of some sort of inherent intelligence to manipulate the Nigerian people. I don't think.
But see, no.
If I can come in here,
honest, just 1 second. Just 1 second. Let me clarify myself. I don't think I'm giving them a lot of credit. You see, for you to campaign for a political position in Nigeria and win in whichever way, you have some level of intelligence. That's the truth. That's why they are able to manipulate. They're able to understudy the people and manipulate their consciences and their intelligence. That's what they do. Now, if they don't have any sort of intelligence, it becomes even difficult for them to become, flag bearer of their political party. So they kind of have some level of, intellectual credibility to be picked up by their political party, because they know that they can play this game. But the thing is this: what Eke says something about these governors or these political guys coming here to celebrate with their children after graduation, why we can do their education. If there's no constitution that places a threshold on budgetary system for education development in Nigeria, how would we build a good education system? Did you see what happened when they came back? Because just 1 second. Because of the decline in oil price, they came back to the table, right, to amend the budget. Did you see what happened to the education budget? Education budget was less preferred to the refurbishment budget of National Assembly. Do you understand? But if there's a constitution that ties the hands of this guy, they'll know that this is a no-go area. We cannot trade on this floor, because there is a threshold here. We cannot go below. But there's nothing like that. That's what I'm saying. If we come back, Honest was talking about restructuring and reforming and realigning, reorientation. If we don't reform the constitution, even if you float, for instance, okay, you gave me your experience. You went to Nigeria and you were sitting down to wait for somebody for how long? The person showed up. You came with a mentality of a structured, corporate behavior, right? But you sat there, waited for this guy for almost a whole day. He came in, and it did as though you've not been waiting for him for the whole day. Now, I float companies back home. Even if you want to do the right thing within your organization, the existing societal value will frustrate it.
Sorry, guys, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask all of you a question. So what do we think now in this context? What do you think should be the contribution? Remember, the topic we're discussing here is how our image has been battered internationally. You and I, how you're being treated where you are now because of the crimes committed by Nigerians individually and collectively, corruption as a country. So what do you think is the contribution? What do you think the political class should be doing now? Because if we don't tell them, it appears, somebody needs to now start talking to them and say, guys, you need to start doing something. What do you think the political class, the guys who hold power, should be doing now to at least change our image, to address the image perception problem?
The eye of the world is on the statistics of Transparency International. Okay, the eye of the world, the eye of the investor. Okay, investors from all nations are on the statistics, produce the documentation of Transparency International. If we increase our profile, if we increase our credibility, if we show that we have changed some things. Beginning, I hope you know that even for this loan that they go for, you have to show a very credible, documentation in different things that in different requirements that these creditors give you. You have to fulfill, you have to satisfy this requirement before they can give you their money. But of course, you know that we are very intelligent in presenting things that we're not ready to implement. So if we increase our profile with the Transparency International, they would.
How is, we're talking about the contribution of, we've talked about things. Yeah, we've talked about, we've talked about what the citizens should do, which is what you and I are doing here. Okay. Then what should the political class, who are the people who are responsible, because they're actually responsible for this, what should be their contribution to address this, our image with Transparency International?
Start with policy change.
Okay.
Revisit the policy, revisit our regulations, revisit the constitution. Because these guys, you see, if you want to know what is happening with Nigerian economy, for instance, follow Bloomberg. They would detail even what the citizenry, even those in National Assembly, does not know about our economy. So because Nigeria is a country that stands out in West Africa because of a lot of things around us. So we are the eye of the world is on Nigeria. And if we begin to change policies, the whole world will know. If we begin to uphold human rights, the whole world will know. What is stopping investors from coming? The profile we have with Transparency International is too wrong, is too bad. What is how do we uphold human rights? Amnesty International comes in and say, this thing you're doing here, this thing you're doing there is not good. And you downplay on the observation, okay, of Amnesty International. You need to begin to respect the value system of the international world if you want to play at their cadre and invite, attract investors to come into your country to invest and create jobs. You need to uphold the value system. You need to support the what's it called? The SMEs. SMEs in Nigeria are crippled. How do you want to build the economy when you cripple the middle class? You don't do that. That's why in Nigeria, it's either you are the upper class or you are the lower class. Middle class is almost crippled. That's why the contribution to the economy is not strong anymore. And that is why our GDP is always going down. Okay, our
can we just jump in, because we need to round up. We need people to watch this stuff as well, because we've struggled for a long time, and we need people to watch this. Again, the political class and us as individuals, as citizens.
I will just list 3 things I think we can just do very quickly. The very first one I just want to just say is about somebody was talking about that politicians no longer campaign, and I say no. Politicians actually campaign. They know what the people want to hear. The people don't want to hear policies. The people don't want to hear manifesto. The people want to hear how much you are bringing that they want to share. Did he bring bag of rice? Did he bring wrapper? That is the level of political sophistication in Nigeria at this point. Why? Because of the hunger. That is number one. Number 2 is, for us to deal with the issue of corruption, we must create economic opportunities for people. As long as people are jobless and hungry, they will create jobs for themselves. Whether you like it or not, whether you like it or not, corruption is a thriving industry in Nigeria. Advanced free fraud is a thriving industry in Nigeria. Naira bet is a thriving industry in Nigeria. As long as you have a phone and you are seeing your mates making money and nothing is happening to them, we must create economic opportunities for youths. People need jobs. They need jobs. As long as they are jobless, they will create jobs for themselves one way or another. Then we must fight corruption. Now, how do you fight corruption when the Yahoo boys are smarter than the EFCC? Now, without prejudice to anyone and with all sense of decency, I don't know if anybody listened to the former EFCC boss, the one that is now.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
I won't want to go there. Okay, let's leave that aside. Now, what I'm trying to say is this. What is the IQ What is the intelligence? What is the technical capacity of the people who are vested with the power to fight corruption? Do they have the abilities to intercept this wire transfers when it's happening? I mean, look at the good job that the UAE officials did and how they were able to bust these crime syndicates. How were they able to do it? Can we do it here? Why is it that all these things are being intercepted outside Nigeria? They are not being intercepted here. So what I'm trying to say is that if we want to fight corruption here in Nigeria, the people in EFCC, the people who are vested with the powers to do this, they need to be trained, their capacities need to be improved so that they will know how to really, because we live in a digital world right now. I mean, these things are happening online. If they don't have the knowledge, and if we don't fight corruption, our image will continue to deteriorate before the eyes of the global community. So if we want to fight corruption, the people in EFCC, they need to be trained. They need adequate training for them to have the capacity to do the work that they are vested with the interest to do. Then we also need to reform the EFCC. If you look at the EFCC Act, you realize that a lot of things are wrong. Number one, the chairman of the EFCC cannot come from outside the circle of the Nigerian police. And seriously,
Buhari has addressed that now. He's appointed another guy. You know, people will have reservations about all of them.
So
one part of the country having that intelligence.
What I'm trying to say is that in the EFCC Act, you cannot be an EFCC chairman if you are not from the Nigerian police. And of course, we know the Nigerian police is very incorruptible, in quotes, very incorruptible. So if you are bringing the EFCC chairman from a very incorruptible Nigerian police, you can imagine what will happen. So we need to reform the EFCC. The act needs to be repealed. Some amendment needs to come in. We need to do a lot of things along that line if we are really serious about fighting corruption. The institution needs to be enhanced. I mean, it's not about individual now. If one individual goes out of the system, can the system function optimally? It's not about having a strong individual head EFCC. It's about having a strong institution. How do we enhance the EFCC to become a strong institution that anybody who heads it can really, that the institution can even function very well, regardless of who heads it? Thank you.
Chris, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, Eke, Honest just touched those areas I've been talking about. You see, if the judiciary is a sort of judiciary that is independent, you're training young lawyers, you employ them into the judiciary. You're training them how lawyers are supposed to be trained. They get into the judicial system. They are paid well. Those jobs are there for them. They will do the job. And an independent system. He's talking about the EFCC. Must we have an EFCC? Why can't we rehabilitate the police? I mean, you
can still have the EFCC as an arm of the Nigerian police.
Yes.
Because you're right, because the Inspector General of Police is if a guy from the police now is heading the EFCC, which automatically makes it an arm of the Nigerian police.
Yeah. It can just be an anti-corruption arm of the Nigerian police. Yes. Or whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. We don't need that extra bureaucracy. That said, you look at the education system, what actually brings people from primary, secondary into university and beyond. Do we have a system that actually develops people who are employable? When you're saying there are no jobs, it's only in Nigeria where every job you have to have a 5-year experience. Go to all Nigerian newspapers. When you see a vacant job adverts, they tell people.
Age is another one.
They tell people you have to have 5 years experience or minimum of 3 years experience. So how is the guy who is leaving the university? How does that person have that 3-year experience you're talking about? So you have a system where even the graduate is unemployable. So you tend to see Nigerian companies going to India to employ people to come and work for them in Nigeria. You see Nigerian companies bringing people who are hand workers here in the West, in Nigeria. They are called engineers and expatriates, because we don't have an education system that actually gives that Nigerian young man the tool to be employed. The guy who is very good at computer, who hacks a company in the US, to be frank with you, if he was employable in Nigeria, I don't think he will find himself in Dubai. So these basics, again, I'm talking about the basics, things that will not need a politician that has two heads, things that will need the system for you to start changing the guy in my village who doesn't know what you're talking about in Abuja. You just need those simple things. So that when the primary school, let me just end with this. Look at it. I'll give you an example of a state in Nigeria. They buy 100 vehicles, because each government, each time a new governor comes in, he buys these wonderful vehicles for the police. They buy 100, 200 vehicles. They are sharing it to the police. But what you realize is that the police station in my village doesn't have a vehicle. The reason the police station doesn't have a vehicle is because there is somebody in my village who has 3 different vehicles owned by the police going after him wherever he moves from one meeting to another. So you don't have the people to deal with crimes. So if you have rehabilitated the police, you will realize that that guy in my village who uses 3 police vehicles nobody is going to give them 3 police vehicles. That would have been used for something else.
Yeah, but my concern, the approach you guys have been going, reforms, this, that, they're all good. But the question here, because I want us to round up, the question here is now, you see why the problem, the Nigeria politics now is like wherever the stomach goes is where people now, their brain now go to. Like if the brain goes now in the direction of the stomach. I mean, it's all about stomach infrastructure. People are hungry. You're talking about sensitization, to a man who hasn't eaten. How do we change these our guys? Sensitize the guys in the village who they don't have it. The youth. The only thing now they can. There's no job opportunity for them. The only way they can eat is just.
Let me even say something very quickly now. Nigerian politics, as it is now, cannot yield the nation we want. Because listen, the truth is that good governance cannot emanate from a broken politics. Now, do you know what we've noticed? You can go and do your own independent analysis. You realize that the middle class in Nigeria, if it still exists, are not interested in politics. The educated elites, the bankers, the oil workers, the accountants, the businessmen who are doing well, the white collar job, how do I put it now? Employees, the ones who are educated, the ones who are employed, the ones who are driving cars and are doing well are not interested in politics. We are not. The ward chairman is uneducated. The ward secretary is uneducated. The local government chairman is uneducated. These are people who have no moral, people who are who can be easily swayed. Listen, until the educated middle class until the elites, the ones that are educated, the bankers, the white collar, not just white collar. Let's not begin to make it look like it's only white collar job people that are smart. What I'm trying to say is that until the man who can afford to feed himself, takes more than just a passing glance in what happens in our politics, we cannot restructure our politics. No. As long as the man who calls the shots in the local government, in the ward, is someone who has not eaten well and someone who probably has not seen money in his life before, I mean, the person will always go with the highest bidder. So what am I trying to say? Listen, the time has gone when people think, okay, as long as whether there is light, there is no light, I can put on my generator and I will have light, no problem. Whether government pays or not, I can take care of myself. Listen, we need to take more than just a passing glance at what happens in our politics. People need to get involved. And by people, I mean the middle class needs to get involved. Listen, we say politics is a dirty game. Politics is not a dirty game. It is just because we have people who shouldn't be in politics that are in politics. If good men can come into politics, these other people will fizzle out. What happened is that we have left the playing ground for people who are morally bankrupt, people who are integrity challenged charlatans to take advantage of the fact that good men have left the playing ground for them and they've messed up this country. Unless good men, the middle class, the technocrats can come out of their banks to say, I need to belong to a party. My brother.
They will tell you, many of them like what you and I are doing here, what you and I are doing here, we are not doing it because I'm not doing it because I'm hungry.
Exactly.
Many of them will sit behind you, call them, they say, no, I don't want to show my face.
Listen,
I don't want to. And you still want good governance.
It was until recently that I started telling myself, see, if someone calls me a politician, I will say, yes, I'm a politician. There is nothing wrong with answering a politician. There is nothing wrong with playing politics. My God, see, what's his name? Joe Biden is a politician. Donald Trump is a politician. Hillary Clinton is a politician. Her husband is a politician. Barack Obama is a politician. There are people who are doing so well. What's his name? Ben Carson is a politician, for goodness sake. The #1 neurosurgeon in the world. He is a politician, and he's not denying it.
But honest, you have a system, yeah. You have a system in Nigeria that has actually relegated these people you're talking about, whom you're asking to join the system or to join the political class. You have a system in Nigeria that has relegated them to the background. And
because we've allowed ourselves to be relegated.
Let me just again, when we talk about education, we are talking about those people who actually have the platform to educate people. If you go to our churches today, you go to the churches, if they have a ceremony, as an example, you realize that the guy who has just stolen money from some old woman in Australia who lives in Malaysia and comes back home for December or for Christmas would be the guy the priest will call to sit on the high table. While in that same congregation, you have a professor who just came back from who just came back for Christmas holiday from Sukkah or from Ibadan. But then the young man who came from Malaysia came with dollars. So and this is a priest doing it. This is a pastor doing it. This is a community head doing it. So those people who are really meant to sensitize that guy in my village, it's not doing it for some mundane reason, which is something I don't understand. So when you're telling the guy who works in a bank, as an example, to get involved in a political party, as an example, the question is, how do they look at him? He comes into a meeting, speaks very well, tells the people what he thinks would make things better. They turn around and look at him and ask him, how much do you have? So, but then if you have created or worked on that system, I mean, those basics, this is what I'm saying, these ones are the basics. Those things that create deterrence. It makes somebody who is an idiot, who wants to get into politics for the sake of looting, he sees that, wow, there's a deterrent. If I leave maybe the little business I'm doing and going to politics because I want to go and become a millionaire, it won't happen, because I won't steal. If I steal the money, I'll go to prison for it. So at that point, you see that those charlatans will not step up.
I agree with you.
The people who know what they are doing. So you just need those basics to be fixed. Those you see, you can preach this every day to Nigerians. Like you said, when they are hungry, they would not listen. But once a leader, somebody decides that my job for Nigeria in the next 4 years, or my job for my state in the next 4 years, is to make sure that I don't use the police as my personal security team. I use the police for the people in my state. The judiciary should be used for the people in my state or for the people of Nigeria. Then at that point.
Yeah, but again, we need to grow beyond, I understand where Honest talked about reforms. We need to grow beyond a place whereby the politician controls the judiciary and controls the police. These systems have to be independent of the the manipulation of the politician, because that is what we are saying in a case whereby, like, if you go for a case against, like, for example, if a sitting president now, he wins election and you want to contest his candidacy, or that he won the election, you're wasting your time, because he has the power to change the judge. If he feels that the judge there is there, he removes the judge and puts somebody that will work for him. So I think, gentlemen, we've spoken for so long today. Thank you all for your contribution. It's been a long one. I think we're going to continue next time. Chris, thank you so much. Honest, you've been brilliant. Ovin, I know you've not been saying anything, you've been contributing. Dr. Tochukwu, you guys have all been wonderful. Thanks for everyone that that's been listening to us, and that we hope to do this more often. You need to contribute. Contribution doesn't mean join us, have a voice. If we keep on talking about these things, you can't just sit in your little corner. You want change. You want Nigeria to be okay. You want to fly into. You keep on complaining about the airports in Nigeria, the police taking bribe. You have a role to play. You have to, in one way or the other, contribute. Let's talk about it. It filters to them. They change. When these guys change, the whole thing changes for you and I. We can even go back home and relax and sleep and, go on holidays. But just imagine what, the chaos, the corona thing, how much we are talking about that has been spent, and it's shameful. But
very shameful.
Like honestly, the political class or the elites or the educated class needs to be involved. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Wonderful having you. Till next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Needs to be involved. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Wonderful having you. Till next time. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and